Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is Tuesday, I hope you all are doing well. It is the game review. Everton 1, Leeds United 0 at Goodison Park at the weekend. Back-to-back wins at home for Sean Dyche and a really important win. Crucial, in fact, in my opinion, of course, after last week's Merseyside derby defeat. This was the game that we were all looking at when Sean Dyche was appointed as Everton manager. The two previous to this one were merely just games that we needed to get through and then set our focus on what are a number of very winnable games, starting with Leeds United at Goodison Park. Obviously, we got that win against Arsenal, which was a massive bonus point, but I feel like the eyes were all on this game and you know the coming games in the next 2-3 weeks or so. But it started ultimately with Leeds United at Goodison, a game that we have typically lost this season, and by that what I mean is sides that have come to Goodison that are in and around the same position as Everton are, struggling in the same way that Everton are, not playing particularly well, not a particularly great football team. A lot of them have come to Goodison Park over the last few months or so and managed to pick up wins like the likes of Southampton, Leicester City, Wolves, of course. You know, obviously we had the defeats to West Ham and Bournemouth as well. They were at home, they were away from home, but certainly those games against Wolves and Southampton sticking out as teams that have come to Goodison Park in and around our position in the Premier League and managed to pick up wins. And this looked like it had the potential to be another one of those days. Leeds United, as I said, just a point above Everton before this game, of course. And, you know, Everton sitting in the relegation zone going into this game. So there really was no other outcome other than a win that was going to be acceptable. Of course, it is worth mentioning that those defeats to Southampton and Wolves, of course, come under different management, under the previous manager, Frank Lampard. And as we established, you know, after the Arsenal defeat, not so much after the Merseyside derby, which was a little bit of a, you know, an anomaly and a game that I think we've all forgotten already anyway. But certainly after the Arsenal game, we established the level of, you know, the difference between, you know, Sean Dyche and Frank Lampard in terms of tactically and in terms of their ability to get, or certainly Sean Dyche's ability to get a lot more out of this current playing squad than what Frank Lampard was getting, put it that way. And I think we saw that on show again on Saturday afternoon. Now, don't get me wrong, I thought Leeds United were absolutely atrocious, and I don't just say this, you know, for the sake of it. I think Leeds United are in real trouble this season, and don't get me wrong, so are Everton. You know, I said after the Arsenal win, and I'll say it again today, you know, just because we've won another game of football and it, you know, it's temporarily taken us out of the relegation zone doesn't mean that everything's okay and that everything will be fine now. There's still a lot of work to do, there's still a lot of football to be played, and there's still a lot of points to, you know, to ultimately go and pick up if we are to sort of look behind us and think, you know what, we're all right now. But Leeds United looked really poor on Saturday afternoon. They didn't offer anything other than a really bad goalkeeping performance and a little bit of fight in a couple of moments, but other than that, they were poor. But that hasn't stopped Everton from losing those types of games before. I thought Wolves were poor on Boxing Day when they come to Goodison Park, and I thought Southampton were poor a number of weeks ago, but those two teams still managed to turn up and still managed to beat Everton and take points away from us. So I think that sort of played into the nerves of this game. And, you know, we sat here and we done the preview on Friday, I believe, and, you know, we spoke about the impact that this game of football could have on the Premier League table. Had Everton have lost this game, we'd have been 4 points adrift of the relegation zone, and of course still in the relegation zone, not adrift of the relegation zone, sorry, you know, 4 points away from being out of the relegation zone, whereas winning this game has put us in 16th position. Now, okay, we're still only a point away from it, but we're also 3 points away from 14th, which is Leicester City. All of a sudden, we're 4 points away from 13th, 6 points. You know, which is 2 wins in the Premier League would take us all the way up to, you know, just behind Aston Villa in 11th. So it was a big win, this, and likewise, it was, you know, it was a big game for both sides because it was the same for Leeds. Leeds ended up losing this game. They currently now sit in 19th position in the Premier League. Of course, they've just appointed their new manager as well. So it was a really important game of football for Everton Football Club, and it was a really important game for these players and the manager to turn up and win. And, you know, I said it before, Sean Dyche was appointed. I would have rather have Sean Dyche's opening couple of games as Everton manager have been against the likes of Liverpool and Arsenal, because there's absolutely no pressure on those games. Nobody expects us to get anything out of them. If we do get anything out of them, then it's a bonus. Turns out we managed to get 3 points out of a possible 6, which was much better than what we had originally accepted. But that would have been a very different feel if Sean Dyche's opening game in charge of Everton would have been against Leeds United at Goodison, because of the importance that it felt behind that game, and behind what was a really, really important win for Everton on Saturday afternoon. And I thought it was. I thought it was a really solid, organised performance once again. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't a breathtaking, oh my God, we're a completely different team and we're the best team in the world performance, but it was an organised performance, which is something that we didn't see very often under Frank Lampard. I'm not really bothered how Everton win games of football. As long as Everton win games of football, I don't really care if we win every game from now and the end of the season, and obviously that won't happen because there will be games that we lose, away from home, and I'm sure there'll be games that we'll lose at Goodison as well. But I'm not particularly bothered if we don't win every game 4-5-0, or the ones we expect to win 4-5-0, if we're winning them 1-0. It doesn't really matter to me if we win 1-0 or we win 5-0, as long as we're winning those games. That's all that matters. And again, we saw, Sean Dyche's ability to organise this team. Again, we saw Sean Dyche's ability to set this team up in the right way to go out there and get, the points. And whilst we sit here talking about a game of football that ultimately was separated by an absolute world-class goal by a world-class professional, not world-class player before anybody jumps on it, a world-class professional and an unbelievable footballer and an unbelievable fella, as well as a massive goalkeeper mistake, because let's be honest, it was a massive goalkeeper mistake. It wasn't that type of game. It wasn't the type of game that you look at and you went, oh, that was tight, and it was only separated by, an absolute worldie. It wasn't tight at all. Leeds United didn't have a single shot on target. They barely had a shot on goal, and the shots they did have on goal barely troubled Jordan Pickford, whereas Everton on another day, similarly to the Arsenal game, we could have had 3 or 4. We had one cleared off the line with a Neil Maupay header. James Tarkowski had a header that was saved really well by Meslier in the first half. We had an opportunity towards the end of the game with Abdoulaye Doucouré, which is just absolutely atrocious. And for me, no professional footballer in that position should mess that up quite like he did. And we had a couple of other chances throughout the game as well that, if players would have been a little bit more screwed on or maybe a little bit more confident, then maybe they'd have turned to goals. For example, the chance when Meslier come out and threw himself on the floor and the ball fell to McNeil, but he was too scared to shoot and tried to pass it to Maupay, and then he didn't want to shoot. Or, we had a moment where Onana had one cut back from Garner, he blasted it over the bar. A couple of really good balls in by McNeil that weren't quite followed in, whereas you look at it and you think, well, if Dominic Calvert-Lewin was there, then maybe he'd have took that gamble because he's a natural sort of centre forward, a natural number 9. So it wasn't a sort of tight 1-0 game that was separated by an unbelievable world-class finish. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't an unbelievable performance and it wasn't an unbelievable game to watch, but on another day it could have comfortably been 3 or 4-0 to Everton, and we'd be sitting here having a very different conversation, of course. And on the flip side, on another day, Seamus Coleman mightn't have hit that as sweet as he did, or mightn't have even attempted to hit it, and the game may have ended 0-0, and we'd be sitting here talking about, Abdoulaye Doucouré's chances as a missed opportunity, etc. We're going to have those games of football, unfortunately, where we do miss chances, and I fear that we're going to have those games of football where, it's a little bit like the Leeds United game. It's a little bit cagey. The opposition team isn't particularly in the game or offering anything to the game. However, Everton haven't really got the quality or the forward ability to break them down. And as I said, I fear that we'll come up against another opposition and Seamus Coleman won't score a worldie, and we'll be sitting here talking about the likes of Abdoulaye Doucouré missing those chances, or Neil Maupay having one off the line, or Dwight McNeil being terrified to shoot. And that ultimately is what, for me, the next step for Sean Dyche is now. It's very clear that he's got these players working hard. It's very clear that he's got these players getting their head down. It's very clear that he's got these players, in good, in good spirits and certainly willing to fight and battle and give absolutely everything, certainly at Goodison Park. The next thing for me is, Sean Dyche and his coaching team getting those players on the training pitch at Finch Farm, and two things really: A, teaching them how to hit a ball and how to hit a ball properly at goal, and B, feeding them the confidence to want to shoot. And I think back to a chance in the first half when Amadou Onana had the ball outside the box and he had a shot with his left foot and it ended up going just wide, I think. And, don't get me wrong, it was absolutely nowhere near goal, but I was just happy to see him have a shot at goal and nobody moaned, nobody groaned. Okay, there was a couple of, that was a bit unlucky, or maybe that was a bit of a wasted chance, but I said it, I think, last week, and I'll say it again. Certainly not me, and I think many other Evertonians would agree, is that you would very, very, very rarely find, Evertonians or Goodison Park that would moan when a player has a shot at goal. Now, okay, there will be exceptions, bloody hell, I can't even speak. There will be exceptions to that, of course. If, let's say, if a player has a shot from 35 yards and, it ends up nowhere near goal, but there was a better pass on, or if a player has a shot, as I said, and there's the through ball on, then yeah, of course, there'll be some moans and there'll be some groans. But generally, if you're a footballer playing for Everton, and you've got the ball on the edge of the box and you can see there's nothing really else on, and you have a shot, even if that shot ends up at the corner flag or in row Z, you're not really going to get much stick for it. Yes, there'll be groans and moans and there'll be some people saying, oh, fucking hell, what was that? But you're not going to get particularly enough stick for it, because that's ultimately what football is about. Football is about winning games of football, and the way you win games of football is by scoring goals, and the way you score goals is by having a go. And if you don't have a go and you're not willing to shoot, or you're afraid to shoot because of the reaction you might get, or because of a lack of confidence or a lack of belief in your own ability, then you're not going to score goals. And we've won 2 games back to back at Goodison, and don't get me wrong, that's brilliant, because if you'd have said to me the day Frank Lampard was sacked, Everton are going to go and win 2 out of the next 3 games, I'd have been over the moon, regardless of how we won them, regardless of whether we won them 5-0 and we were playing lovely football, or regardless of whether we won them 1-0 and the ball came off the referee's arse in the last minute and went in, and that's how we won it. I wouldn't care as long as we won. However, as I said, there will be games where James Tarkowski doesn't necessarily climb up and win that header from a corner, or like the game against Leeds, James Tarkowski does climb up and win a really good header in pretty much the exact same situation as he did with the goal against Arsenal, but this time Meslier makes a good save, whereas Ramsdale didn't. There'll be games where Seamus Coleman doesn't hit one from the edge of the box in an absolute world-class manner, and it rustles the back of the net. So that then further emphasises the point of, as I said, for me, getting these players into the training pitch at Finch Farm, and ultimately, and this is an aimed point, I'm not going to lie, this is an aimed point, this is aimed at the forward players, the likes of Dwight McNeil, the likes of Neil Maupay, the likes of, I think maybe Damari Gray's a little bit unfair on, because we haven't seen him very much recently, and again, I think that's not unusual, but certainly something that I think we need to see a little bit more of, because ultimately he is our top goal scorer, and whether he's consistent as we need him or not, he's still got the ability to change a game, and I think we'd be silly to not utilise that ability. But ultimately, the manager needs to be able to get these players on the training pitch and give them that confidence to have a go when they're presented with an opportunity to have a go, because that's the only way we're going to win games, is by scoring goals. And once again, similarly to, the chances we had against Arsenal, Abdoulaye Doucouré, and don't get me wrong, I think Abdoulaye Doucouré in the last 2 games at Goodison Park, again, I'm just going to completely ignore the Merseyside derby, because in my head it never happened. I was in Amsterdam when it happened, so I'm not even quite sure that it did happen. But in both of the home games that Sean Dyche has managed the football club, Abdoulaye Doucouré has been absolutely unbelievable. In terms of his performances, in terms of his impact on the game against Arsenal, he was fantastic. He was everywhere. He was winning everything. And as I said, against Leeds, I thought he had a good game as well. Not as good, not as impactful, but still a really good, impactful game of football. However, in both of those games, he's missed chances that he shouldn't be missing. And it's ultimately, as I said, it's all right when we've won the game and we can sit here and go, we should have done better with that, but we'll move on. But I fear there will be games this season where we're not winning, and those are the chances that we need to take, and we don't take them, and then we end up losing out on points that we could have really done with. So, as I said, Abdoulaye Doucouré for me is the perfect example. 2 really, really good performances back to back in home games. However, 2 massive chances in both games that he should have scored. Not chances that you'd look at and you go, oh, that's a little bit unlucky, or we maybe should have done better, but he fell short a little bit. No, the header against Arsenal is atrocious. He should be getting that on target at the very least, and the chance against Leeds is massive as well. And that's not me just digging out Abdoulaye Doucouré. I just want to emphasise the point that that's one thing I took from Leeds, is that I hate watching Everton. I watched it on Match of the Day, and instead of Match of the Day focusing on Everton's organisation or our ability to look much better, and we did look much better than Leeds, and Leeds were in a similar position at the start of the afternoon. Instead of that, they focused on the lack of quality up top, or the lack of any real, quality on goal. And had we have won that game 3 or 4-0, which we could have, that wouldn't have been the focus, would it? So, again, great performance, and I'm not being negative. I'm not trying to bring the mood down. I'm not trying to have a go. I'm not doing that whatsoever, because I think Sean Dyche at the moment is working really, really well with these players to sort of, to do that old task when you take your top off after the gym and you drip it and the sweat everywhere. He's literally dripping every bit of anything out of these players at the moment. Certainly in terms of desire and commitment and organisation, and everything looks just so much better than what it did under Frank Lampard. These players look like they'd never kicked the ball under Frank Lampard, whereas now they actually look like they know what they're doing. They're in shape. They're in they're in an organisation. However, I think the next step is turning those chances that we sit here and we go, oh, we should have done better, turning them into goals. Because as I said, it's not like we're talking about 35-yard screamers and I'm saying, well, we need to score them. I'm talking about one-on-ones. No professional footballer, in my opinion, from the position that Abdoulaye Doucouré was in, should mess it up like Abdoulaye Doucouré did. I know it was on his weak foot, and I know he was trying to turn it onto his strong foot, etc., etc. But you've got to do better there, because on another afternoon, we're not winning 1-0, and we don't win that game. Same with his header against Arsenal, same with, a couple of Dominic Calvert-Lewin's chances against Arsenal. This isn't just an Abdoulaye Doucouré thing. Dom had a couple of chances against Arsenal. He should have done better with Dwight McNeil. Had a chance, even in the derby, where if he just used his right foot, Liverpool wouldn't have scored their opening goal. So there's definitely room for improvement, and as I said, for me, that is the manager now getting these players on the training field and really trying to breed some confidence in them, especially in and around areas of attacking areas, and that confidence of when you've got the ball, in and around the box, especially in the box, and if forced to your feet and you've got a little bit of space, don't overthink it. Don't think, who can I get this pass to because I don't want this responsibility. Have a go, and if you blast it over the bar, then you blast it over the bar. It is what it is. But you might just have a go and it might just rustle into the back of the net, or you might have a go and it might be the worst shot you've ever hit in your life, but it might take a deflection off one of their defenders and go into the back of the net, and it still counts as a goal. So that is the next step for me for Sean Dyche, and turning those chances into goals. But we can't overlook what was a really, really, really important win for Everton at the weekend. As I said, it was against a poor Leeds team, and it was a really, really poor Leeds team, but that doesn't matter. None of that matters. What matters is that we managed to get the win, and what matters is that we come away 3 points better off. 6 points out of 6 at Goodison Park. As I said, okay, we've had that Merseyside derby defeat in the meantime, which is fine, but we'll ignore that because we don't want to talk about the Merseyside derby. But it was a really, really, really important win, and obviously gives us a lot of confidence going into another big game at the weekend against Aston Villa. Again, I don't think we've beaten Aston Villa since 2016 or something like that, which is baffling considering Aston Villa aren't that unbelievable. Don't get me wrong, they're a decent side and they've generally been a decent side over the years, but it's not like we're talking about Manchester City here or a Merseyside derby. We're talking about Aston Villa, so that will be a difficult game, but there's no better way to go into a difficult game than off the back of a really, really big, important 3 points, and that's what it was against Leeds United. Obviously, the manager made one change to the team that faced Liverpool in the Merseyside derby on Monday, taking out Ellis Sims and replacing him with Neil Maupay. Slightly controversial, given the differences in in physicality between somebody like Ellis Sims and Neil Maupay, and considering obviously the obvious elephant in the room, which is the difference in their height. Ellis Sims is, of course, a much more like-for-like replacement to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and if Everton want to play in the same ways that we've been playing recently, where Dominic Calvert-Lewin is the focal man and he's the man you aim for, and he holds the ball up and he brings everybody into play with his takedowns or his head-ons or whatever it is, then of course that isn't likely to isn't likely to stick in quite the same way with Neil Maupay, because he's such a different striker. But I actually thought Neil Maupay had a really, really, really good game on Saturday. The manager made no other changes, of course. Stuck with Seamus Coleman at right back, which turned out to be a worldy decision. Of course, literally a worldy decision. Vitaly Mykolenko at left back. The two centre halves stayed the same, and of course the midfield stayed the same as well. But yeah, I actually think Neil Maupay had a really, really impressive game on Saturday, and I've seen a couple of people saying, he didn't have a good game whatsoever. He wasn't good. He was lazy. He wasn't doing anything. I just didn't see it whatsoever. I just didn't see it. Don't get me wrong, he had a couple of maybe opportunities that he should have done a little bit better with. I think he's unlucky to not get a goal. Ultimately, if there's not, I think it's Weston McKennie stood on the line, then, Neil Maupay's got a goal, and all of a sudden we're talking about his performance in a very different manner. But I thought his performance overall generally was very, very good. And to be honest, I thought it was very, very, very similar to Dominic Calvert-Lewin's against Arsenal. He was involved, he was winding people up, he was getting at the back of people, he was holding the ball up well, he made a couple of opportunities for himself, and okay, the shots ended up being very tame and quite comfortable for the goalkeeper, but he was still finding that space, and he was still finding that time to move with the ball and find a half a yard and then get a shot away, which is all we ask. As I said, I'll never sit here on this channel and say, oh my god, that shot by Neil Maupay was shite, if he's found himself half a yard and had to go at goal. Because, whether or not it was a really poor shot and it was an easy save for the goalkeeper, at least he's found himself that half a yard and had to go. And if you, as I said before, if you don't shoot, you don't score. Fucking hell, prime example, Seamus Coleman and his goal on Saturday afternoon. But yeah, I thought generally his performance was very, very good, Neil Maupay, and maybe that's just because I'm in a good mood because we've won this game. Maybe that's just because, I specifically was focused a lot on Neil Maupay during this game because I wanted to see how he worked in this system, and also whether or not the system had changed to try and suit Neil Maupay. But no, I thought he had a good game. I thought he was solid. I thought he battled. I thought he worked hard. As I said, a couple of times he found a little half a yard for himself. Anytime there was a little bit of a little bit of a kerfuffle or an altercation, he was there. He was involved. He was straight over. He wasn't scared to get involved. He wasn't scared to put himself about. And he was much more of a handful on Saturday than I've ever seen him, since he joined the football club. Now, that's not saying he was as much of a handful as Dominic Calvert-Lewin, because ultimately he wasn't, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, of course, is a massive handful, and we know that, and Dom always has been like that. But he still, for me, was a massive handful, and that's more than what Neil Maupay generally has been, since joining the football club. And if we can get more of that type of performance from him, then I think he definitely will be suited more to the way in which we're playing, especially given it, we have no clue on how long Dominic Calvert-Lewin is going to be out for, or what he's out with, or, let's be honest, we can't rely on Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I've said it before and I'll say it again. For me now, Everton simply have to move away from Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and that doesn't mean bin him off or sell him or get rid, because you're not going to be able to sell him anyway, because who's going to want to buy him at the price Everton would want for him. But the reality is, for me, Everton now shouldn't be in the market for a striker that comes in and becomes the backup to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, or that comes in and becomes the number two. Everton now should be looking for a striker as if Dominic Calvert-Lewin didn't play for the football club. We should be looking for an out-and-out goal-scoring number 9, somebody that we hypothetically, obviously, given Everton's financial situation, this isn't going to happen, but hypothetically, somebody we spend 50, 60, 70 million quid on because we're desperate for the striker, and then all of a sudden Dominic Calvert-Lewin becomes the number 2, and if Dom can get his way to fitness and he can find some form, form, then he battles with whoever that new striker is for that number one space, or they play together. But that way, we're not reliant on Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He hasn't got the pressure of a whole football club on his shoulders, and we move away from, as I said, this whole sort of absolute panic and anxiety of every single time Dominic Calvert-Lewin goes off, or every single time there's a press conference, we're all sitting there going, but what about Dominic Calvert-Lewin? Because it's just, we can't do it anymore. We simply cannot do it anymore. But yeah, as I said, for the meantime, I thought Neal Maupay generally had a good game. Thought he was solid. Thought he was much more impactful than what he has been, in recent weeks. And yeah, he seemed to work hard. He put himself about. He battled, and like I said, I actually think for his last two performances, especially at Goodison, again, that Merseyside derby didn't exist. He's done what he's needed to do, and they've been very different roles. He come on against Arsenal to wind people up and to put himself about and to make a nuisance of himself, and he did that really well. And obviously, he started the game against Leeds to do similar, but also hold the ball up and play other people in, and work in that system, and I think he did work in that system as well. As I said, the manager went with the same team, barring the change for Ellis Sims coming out for Neal Maupay. I think from the off, you could tell it was a game between two teams that are very similar at the moment, in terms of a lack of any real conviction or any real quality, and certainly any real attack and power. I wasn't disappointed with Leeds, because obviously, I'm not a Leeds fan, and I wasn't particularly arsed how poorly they performed, but I expected more. I expected more from the likes of Nonso. I expected more from the likes of Somerville, the likes of Weston McKennie. I expected more from them. On paper, I thought their attack seemed a lot more menacing than what ours did. And their attack was less impactful than what ours was. And don't get me wrong, I don't particularly think Dwight McNeil or Alex Iwobi were massively involved. Alex Iwobi, of course, got the assist for the goal, which was a really nice cross. And as I said, Dwight McNeil really nice over the top ball, and Dwight McNeil put a couple of really good crosses into the box that weren't anticipated as well. But I thought the Leeds forward line was really, really poor. And as I said, for that first sort of half, for that first 45 minutes, it was a game between two teams, neither of which seemed particularly, had, the courage for their convictions, had particularly any conviction to go out and, I don't want to say win the game, but I think Everton looked the better team. I think Everton looked the team more on top, and I think we were more on top throughout the entirety of the game. And I think we had chances in that first half. And as I said, had Neal Maupay not been cleared off the line, or had Dwight McNeil had a little bit more confidence in him, or had, Amadou Onana been a little bit more composed, then maybe we go in at half-time 3-0 up, and it's a completely different conversation that we're having. But it was just very typical of Everton in terms of being on top, in a game like this, because I thought we were on top against Wolves in the first half. I thought we were on top against Southampton, being on top, but not taking the chances, and not taking those opportunities that come to us. As I said, we had a couple, we had one, like I said, where the ball come in, and, there was a flick on header, Neal Maupay flicked it on, and it was cleared off the line. Tarkowski had a header that was saved well. Onana has one where Ghana, a really, really, really good bit of play. Garner knocks the ball around and cuts it back, and Onana ends up putting it into Roser. Then we had another one where, as I said, McNeil put a good ball across, and Maupay just didn't quite anticipate it. And you're sort of sitting there thinking, where is the goal going to come from? Where's the goal going to come from? I wasn't at any point in that game worried about Leeds United at all. Not once. Not once did I look at any of Leeds United players and think, they're looking like they could hurt us. I thought Somerville was completely out the game. I thought Nonso was completely out the game. I thought Weston McKennie was completely out the game, and that ultimately is why they resorted to trying to cause trouble, just before the end of the first half, because they had nothing else to do. However, one thing I noticed in the first half was Meslier's inability to be a good goalkeeper. And I don't really mind being harsh, because I think the fella's an absolute idiot, to be honest with you. I think his attitude stinks. I thought he was a disgrace. I thought he was a disgrace and should have been sent off for throwing out during that little kerfuffle. But I made up he wasn't sent off, because he showed just how bad of a goalkeeper he is by standing 35 yards off his line in the second half. But, as I said, we had opportunities, and it was a similar story to what it has been a few times this season, where we just couldn't finish those chances. We just couldn't make the most out of those chances. We just couldn't convert them into goals. And you are then sort of sitting there, I think, at half time with that general feeling of, is this going to be another one of them games that we get to full time and, they score in the last minute or they score in the second half and we can't get back in the game, and you're sort of sitting there scratching your head thinking, well, if only we'd have, took one of those chances in the first half. We come out in the second half, and as I said, I think the players had a little bit of a talking to at half time, mainly as opposed to, you're on top of you, keep getting at them, keep battling, keep creating chances, one will fall for you. I still think there were a couple of moments in the second half where we had opportunities in and around the box and we just didn't seem confident enough to put a foot through it, or confident enough to make anything really of it, which is worrying, because, as I said, that's something that needs changing from the manager and the coaching staff, and that's something personally that if I was Sean Dyche, I'd be focusing on. Because I think it's an important point, is focusing on having, especially your attacking players, also your midfield, of course, because the midfield is ultimately really important in this, but certainly your attacking players having that confidence to be able to have a go from the edge of the box, or when a chance presents itself to having a shot at goal. And again, Leeds United in the second half, very little, didn't really do much, didn't really offer much, didn't really bring anything to the table, didn't really bring anything to the game, and we were still testing, we were still getting forward. That was when I thought Neil Maupay really stood out in that second half. There were a couple of moments where he created a little bit of space for himself, he created a little bit of time for himself on the ball, he picked the ball up and he'd knock it past, and he created an opportunity, or he created a little bit of space. And as I said, he gave their defence something to think about. Now, I'm fully aware that might be to do with the fact that their defence is incredibly poor and nowhere near as good as other defences in the league, and maybe that's the reason why. But you have to give Neil Maupay the benefit of the doubt. He caused an issue, he caused a problem, he caused himself, he put himself in the mix, and ultimately that's all we could have asked for. But we're still prodding, we're still having a go, we're still trying to get shots at goal, or the crowd are sort of starting to become a little bit more lively, and again, that you can feel the nervous energy, but you can also feel the importance of what 3 points would mean. A couple of changes, a couple of adjustments made, and then what was, I can only describe as a moment that I still can't quite believe. To be honest with you, I'm still in disbelief that I witnessed this live. And I'm not just saying that because it's Seamus Coleman, and I'm not just saying that because it's Everton, and I'm not just saying that to try and sound, dramatic, or to try and sound like it was bigger than what it was. I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure how this happened. I really, really don't know. And the Blues is, how do we know it's confidence, Cam? The players we've got have never been prolific, so I don't think it's low confidence. They're just bad at finishing. But it is low confidence because if they had a go and missed by 15 yards, or at the corner flag, or it rose head, then yeah, I'd say it's bad finishing. But you can often see, watch whenever the ball forces Dwight McNeil outside the box or in and around the 6-yard box, he won't shoot. He'll firstly look for a pass, and then he'll be closed down. He won't shoot. And it's happened with Neil Maupay a couple of times where the ball's fallen to him, and it's almost like, shit, I've got the ball here. It's not an instinct to go, I'm going to wrap my foot around this and have a go. It's a, shit, what do we do with this? That's not being bad at finishing, because you haven't had the shot to see if you're bad at finishing. That's just not having the confidence to have the shot in the first place. And that might be because they believe they're bad at finishing, but that ultimately still comes from their lack of confidence within themselves. But anyway, as I said, I still can't quite believe I witnessed this live in the flesh. A good ball over the top by Alex Iwobi. A really, really good ball over the top by Alex Iwobi. And Seamus Coleman is firstly bursting down the right-hand side, which is not something we see very often. And I'm not saying that to take the piss or to have a go, but the reality is we don't often see Seamus Coleman in those areas anymore. On the edge of on the edge of the opposition box on the right-hand side in a position to put a cross in. We don't often see, we very rarely see Seamus Coleman crossing the halfway line anymore. So, firstly, he found himself in a position where he could put a really good ball into the box. He said in his interview that you know, he was running as fast as his legs could take him. He was running as quick as his legs had let him. But the only problem is he found himself in a position where he could put a good ball into the box. The problem being is there was nobody in the box. Neil Maupay was running through treacle toffee trying to get there. None of the midfield had any real sort of urgency to bust in the box and to make themselves available. And Seamus Coleman he had two options really. One of them, well, he had three options. One of them would have been to swat the ball at the defender and try and get a corner. One of them would have been to stop the ball and cut back and then wait for help, wait for somebody to come in and try and support him. Or one of them would have been within a millisecond, look up, notice that Meslier is having a cup of tea on the edge of the 6-yard box, and then within another millisecond, hit the ball sweetly on the volley at the tightest of angles and rifle it into the back of the net. And that's the option he chose. And that was the right option. And he absolutely perfected it. He absolutely perfected it to a T. How many times have we seen players, even Seamus himself, in similar positions to that before, and he's stopped the ball, or he's cut it back, or it's ran out of play. We don't often see goalkeepers, in that position. To be honest, I just don't think Meslier is a very good goalkeeper. To be honest with you, I think he's dreadful. But still, to hit that from there with that position and with that, accuracy and quality is unbelievable. Is unbelievable. And as I said in the instant match reaction on Saturday, that is vintage Seamus Coleman. If you're not an Everton fan, or you're only, you've only just become an Everton fan in recent years, and you're used to the Seamus Coleman that doesn't really get forward anymore and gets exploited for his pace defensively and this, that and the other, that goal on Saturday isn't a, oh my God, how did he do that? That's completely out of the blue. That's just what Seamus Coleman used to do 5-6 years ago, comfortably. I remember Seamus scoring goals like that, and you just sort of go, wow, what a brilliant goal that is, but that's just what he does. It wasn't a surprise. It was a surprise in the situation, because all of a sudden we're 1-0 up, and you're sort of sitting there going, how the fuck's that happened? But generally, with it being Seamus, it's not a surprise, because he's always had the ability. You remember him scoring one against Southampton where, a little bit less of a tight angle, of course, and their goalkeeper was actually in his goal where he should have been. But he had it on the right-hand side, and he just rifled it instead of crossing it. He just rifled it into the top corner. And it was again, a fantastic, fantastic goal, a fantastic, fantastic finish. Nobody deserves it more than Seamus did. He definitely meant it, by the way. So if you're on the internet saying he didn't mean it, then I assume you're the same people that are on the internet saying that Nick Pope should play in a cup final despite what was the most blatant red card I've ever seen in my life. He definitely meant it. As I said, don't get me wrong, it's a really poor goalkeeper mistake from Meslier, but ultimately, to still be able to, to make that decision, to look up and to make that decision in a split second, and then to hit that with the accuracy that he hit it with, and then to hit it with the power that he did, and it's in the situation, in the position, with the tightness of the angle, it was unbelievable. It was an unbelievable goal. It was a great finish, and as I said, absolutely. Nobody deserves it more than Seamus did. It was a really, really good finish, and he put us 1-0 up, and all of a sudden we're sitting there going, right, okay, completely out the blue now, we've got a lead. And from that point on, I was always confident. I was always confident from that point on, because I never, ever, ever felt any sort of pressure from Leeds. And if I was a Leeds United fan, I'd have been horrified watching that. Probably similar to how we felt when we watched the Southampton, game, or the Wolves game, or West Ham away a couple of weeks ago. Because they had nothing, and even when they went 1-0 down, there was no urgency to get back in the game. There was no urgency to try and create anything. They had nothing. So as soon as we went 1-0 up, I just sort of felt confidence. I was like, well, don't get me wrong. 1-0 is a dangerous scoreline in football, and you're never home and dry at 1-0, but I almost just felt like these don't have anything. Their players don't seem confident. The players don't seem to have any belief. They don't seem to have any quality, and I always felt like Everton would then go on and win the game, and we did. We managed it really well at that point, as I said. Manager makes a couple of substitutions. Midfield, I thought, were working well. Garner, again, good game, not an unbelievable game, because I thought there was a couple of times he was caught on the ball in possession, and he's done that a few times this season where he's being caught on the ball in possession, and that needs to stop. But generally a good game. Off the ball worked well. Onana, again, not unbelievable, but a decent game. To Corey, a good game. And, we sort of just saw the game out. We had another couple of half chances to try and get more out of the game. We didn't. And as I said, I don't want to talk too much on Corey's opportunity, because we done 15 minutes at the start of the stream talking about the necessity to get these players like Abdoulaye Doucouré on the training pitch focusing on his shooting. But, he has a chance that ultimately we all know he should do much, much better with. But Everton see the game out. The final whistle's blown, and Sean Dyche picks up his second consecutive win at Goodison Park. Everton out of the relegation zone, Leeds into the relegation zone, and all of a sudden, whilst it might only be a point, that is the difference in terms of Everton being in the relegation zone and not being in it. And whilst it may only be sort of a temporary thing, and whilst Sean Dyche, can say that we don't focus on the table at this point, or whatever it may be, it's just a breath of fresh air to be able to look at the Premier League table and see Everton out of that position, and see, we've seen 2 wins in 3 games, 2 wins in the space of a week. The last time we saw a win prior to the Arsenal game was October. Last time we saw 2 wins in such a short period of time was probably about 2013. So, yeah, a really, really good result. A decent performance. I thought we were by far and wide the much better team, by the way. 1-0 scoreline doesn't really suggest that, and some people might think it was tighter than I did, but I thought we were by far the better team. We will have to step it up again against Villa, because, the likelihood is, Emi Martinez won't stand 45 yards off his line, or, the likelihood is we might get a really good header off a corner. So, ultimately, I think this game against Villa has got the potential to be the one where those chances that we've missed in the last 2 come back to bite us. So that's why we've got to seriously work on that over the next few days. But a really, really good win. A decent performance, another 3 points. We take it, we move on, and hopefully we can go and do it again on Saturday. But anyway, we are going to leave it there. If you have enjoyed this one, please do hit that like button. It does only take a second. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. If you're watching as a live stream, massive thanks to everybody for getting involved in the live comments. And if you're watching as a YouTube video, leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. We will be back over the next couple of days, so don't forget to stay subscribed and look out for those videos. But until then, big thank you all for watching. Leave a like if you've enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new, up the fucking toffees, and we'll see you later.